And you are listening to another edition of the X106 Sports Podcast with Jacob Blair, Shawnino, and I am Trevor Mader. Lot to talk about here today, and we're going to jump right into things. First off, it was week 4 of the college football season, and guys, what takeaways did you get from this past Saturday?
Well, Alabama's really good at football. I can tell you that much. Another hot take. No, not even a hot take. Just kind of scrolling down the list of games that happened. Baylor looked better than what they had. I mean, they only lost to Oklahoma by 8, and it was 49-41. So maybe they're not as bad as people thought, or maybe they just played the best game of the year and they're still really bad. I'll save your game for later, Trevor. One game that I predicted wrong and was very surprised to see was TCU Oklahoma State. The Horned Frogs went into Oklahoma State, and they whooped them.
Yeah, and I don't – what the final score ended up being 44-31, and I don't think that was really indicative of what the game actually was. At one point it was 31-10 or 37-10, something like that maybe. And the Big 12 does this every year. You have a team like in Oklahoma State that you see the first couple weeks and go, okay, this team's really, really good. And then they'll play a team like a TCU or West Virginia and just get walloped, and it makes you scratch your head about the Big 12. And then at the end of the year, you get a Big 12 team like an Oklahoma State that maybe goes 11-1, but they don't get in. Well, then they whine that they don't get in. But the Big 12 is just so all over the place every year that it makes it difficult to justify a Big 12 team being in the playoff. I don't know that's where we'll be at this year because I think Oklahoma has the power to run the table. And I think Oklahoma State could win out, I think. But I didn't think they'd lose to GCU at home by 2 touchdowns. So, I don't know, Big 12's weird.
Yeah.
One thing for me is the way everything already looks to be shaping up as it looks again. There's not going to be 4 clear-cut teams heading into the playoff selection, and we're all going to be arguing about who deserves the spot right now, other than Alabama. Alabama's a lock.
Yeah, I think right now, the way things are going, Alabama's probably a lock. Whoever wins the Pac-12, assuming they go undefeated, whether it's USC or Washington, Clemson right now, Florida State's obviously, we saw this week, Florida State's obviously not as strong as we thought they were. They got a test this week with Virginia Tech, but Clemson might be able to surprise some people and sneak up in there. You still can't count the Big 12 champion, whoever it is. There's probably 3 teams out of the Big 10 that, I mean, realistically still have a shot of winning that conference and getting in the playoffs. So I'd say there's probably about 10 teams that have a chance of getting in.
Mm-hmm. I think right now if we had to stop it, it would be Alabama, Clemson, Oklahoma, and Penn State.
Yeah.
Because you would have to leave out the Pac-12 just because they haven't truly impressed yet because they've just beaten up on themselves. And, I mean, right now USC's best game is against Stanford, and Stanford hasn't looked very good at all.
No. So going back on the action Saturday, I know, Sean, I know you were a little preoccupied Saturday, and Jacob, I'm going to take a guess and say you're preoccupied Saturday night. What games did you guys see that maybe kind of entertained you?
Well, I only actually watched one Saturday game, and it actually entertained me more than I was hoping, to your detriment or to your greatness. I'm not really sure because the game itself was Penn State versus Iowa. Okay, I'm going to pull up the box score because Iowa had like 54 yards.
57 total yards of offense.
Yards of offense within the first half. And I was like, Trevor, they're going to win a game that they're going to have under like 100 yards. Now, they came out of it and they had close to 300.
No, was it? But Penn State had like 550 total yards of offense.
Well, yeah, I mean, I was going to get to the Penn State side of it later. But I'm just saying, like, Iowa lost by 2 points with 191 yards of passing and 82 yards rushing.
So
compared to the Penn State passing yards, Trace McSorley had 284 yards, and Penn State rushed for 300 yards.
So Penn State had 584 yards, and Iowa had 273.
Barkley had 211 rushing yards, and he was their top receiver at 94. Side note, he's going to be a great player.
The thing with Barkley that being an Iowa fan, I know statistically he shredded them, but the thing I took pride in is it wasn't like he was just carrying off these 50, 60-yard runs. He had a couple of
44-yard run, but his longest pass completion was 15.
And how many carries did he have?
28.
Yeah, most of Saturday night's kind of a blur from that game. When they were up 7-5, which is just a great halftime score, when they're up 7-5 with 57 total yards of offense in the first half, I was telling myself, this makes no sense whatsoever. Welcome to the world of Iowa football, and I think that's a great loss for the program. I think they, even though you don't win, being in the spotlight, primetime, ABC, in Kinnick Stadium, and you go punch for punch with the number 4 ranked team in the nation. And in my money, Penn State's the best team in the Big Ten. And I'm not even sure it's really that close. I think Penn State's, their defense clamped down against an Iowa offense that had been playing really, really good. I mean, Trace McSorley's probably the best quarterback in the Big Ten.
Yeah, but right now he's not really fighting a lot in the Big Ten because the Big Ten doesn't have a lot of the big name quarterbacks.
Nathan Stanley is probably the 3rd best quarterback in the Big Ten right now, and he's played 4 games.
And J.T. Barrett could be the best, but he's looked bad this year. So.
And Saquon Barkley's not only the best running back in the Big Ten, the best running back in the nation. And it was a great game. Even being an Iowa fan and having to experience a heartbreak at the end, it was a great game to watch back and forth. I just wish it would have ended about 4 seconds earlier because I would have been really happy to come in here Monday morning and to be able to brag and feel better because I picked that game on Weekend Sports Kickoff and I was thinking, man, holy cow, I'm actually going to be right. I wasn't preparing for this. I honestly didn't anticipate this, and unfortunately it didn't happen.
Yeah, and I agree with you guys that I think Penn State is the best team in the Big Ten. You can't really sleep on Michigan.
No.
They're still there. They're still undefeated. But the one kind of, I guess, team that's flying under the radar a little bit that's stuck out a little bit this week was Georgia.
Yep.
They won 31-3 against the ranked Mississippi State team, and they're in the SEC East. They don't have to go through Alabama until they get to the SEC championship game. I think they could sneak into that SEC championship, not sneak into the SEC championship game, but get there and sneak up on Alabama and make things really interesting. But that Georgia team looks pretty good right now.
Yeah, they do. And they play in the SEC East, which Tennessee and Florida are the 2nd and 3rd best teams in the SEC East. And I don't think highly of either one. I mean, Tennessee could barely get by UMass. I know Florida beat Kentucky, but it wasn't. I mean, they had to work for it. So, yeah, it's what's that, John?
The SEC East it's
bad.
I have the teams in front of me. Well, they have to play Missouri. That's a win. Vanderbilt could give them trouble, but they got absolutely rolled by Alabama. Tennessee, you never really know who's going to show up. They could go and give 550 yards of offense.
Or they could have 175.
Yeah. And Kentucky, I think, is pretty good. They're not great, but they're not bad at all, either. South Carolina, meh. Florida's going to give them a tough chance, but Florida's offense can either go out and score 3 touchdowns or they're not going to score for 9 quarters.
Yeah, so Georgia is a team that could go 11-1 or 12-0 and then get into the SEC championship game, and we'll see how that would go against Bama. But, I think Georgia's a team that definitely could be flying under the radar right now. Looking ahead, guys, Week 5, one thing I've noticed, not a ton of marquee matchups, but when you look at it, is there any game on the docket this Saturday that kind of intrigues you more than others?
For me, it's the USC-Washington State game. Washington State, they're a decent team. They're ranked 16th in the country, and it's going to be another test for USC to kind of build their resume because they're in the Pac-12, which might not necessarily be as strong as some of the other conferences. They need to handily win that game Friday. They play Friday. Handily win that game so they can build that resume to make sure that they're in the playoff if indeed they do what they need to do in the season to get to the playoff. It's a game like this where they can handily beat a Washington State team and say, we want to make sure the Pac-12 is in the playoff.
Sean?
I'm also going to start with a game that is also on Friday, kicks off at 6 p.m. It is Miami versus Duke. So far, I think Miami has only played Bethune-Cookman and Toledo because their away game against Arkansas State was canceled, and the Florida State game is postponed to next week. So I think this is their first real game that they have to have, and as Florida State last week, they just kind of died on the field. And so I want to see how this team looks after not really having played a team all throughout the year, and it being week 5 now, and so you don't normally get the chance to see a team not have played anybody this far into the year.
I got a couple that I got my eye on this week. Obviously, the big one, I know game day is going to be there, Clemson, Virginia Tech. Blacksburg's a tough place to play. So I'll be interested to see how Clemson does there. It's actually Thursday night. This is maybe a little bit of a homer one. Texas Iowa State. I think Iowa State's a good football team, and I don't think Texas is a terrible football team. I think Texas is a bowl team.
Why is it a Thursday?
I don't know. Iowa State always has one game on a Thursday a year, and I have a friend that goes to Iowa State, and I saw on Twitter that he was complaining that he has a Thursday afternoon class, like a 2 o'clock class, and he has an exam on Thursday before the Texas Iowa State game. Isn't that awful?
Well, then study up and then go party later, honestly. Like, that's just all you have to do.
Yeah, but that's an interesting game to me because I want to see how Iowa State comes out in that game. I mean,
yeah.
I really do. And then another one that is kind of intriguing to me, we alluded to it a little bit earlier, Georgia-Tennessee. It's at Tennessee. Tennessee's a weird team. Sometimes they show up, sometimes they don't. I'm with Jacob. I think Georgia's a team that could really kind of fly under the radar. I don't think they could get past Bama, but I think they could get up there and be one of those teams that could definitely make teams worry come November or December. But that's an interesting team to me. It wouldn't be the first time a team got a freshman quarterback and took him, deep into the postseason. So I'll be interested in that one. Maybe that'll be one of our pick'em games. We always seem to pick one SEC game that really isn't.
Well, I have another SEC game that.
Is it Ole Miss Bama?
No, Mississippi State Auburn.
That's gonna be an interesting
because
one.
I want to see. Because I believe Auburn's good enough that they're probably the second best team in the SEC. But Mississippi State is coming off of 2 weeks where they beat LSU handily, and then they handily got beat by Georgia.
Didn't you pick Mississippi State to beat Georgia?
I did, because I kind of went with the fact, like, oh, hey, they beat a team, and now I'll hop on your back, and then they died.
Who was it that called a letdown game for Mississippi State?
Probably Devin.
He might have, too.
It might also have been Max, because then that got into the question of why do they call it, Between the Hedges?
No, that was on the pregame show for the Northwest game. Max wasn't there for the college football pick'em.
Well,
whatever. It was me, Sean. It was me.
Whatever. Trevor's trying to gloat because I suck at picking college games, which is true. And, well, the thing that I want to see is, can they come out and are they for real? Are they the team that beat LSU, or are they the team that got smoked by Georgia?
Yeah, that'll be an interesting matchup. Anything else you guys want to add to college football?
Really just that Clemson-Virginia Tech game. Again, I think that's going to be one of Clemson's biggest tests of the year. We thought that might have been Louisville. They kind of ran over Louisville. The offense from Clemson a couple weeks ago, I was a little bit concerned about their offense and being a true contender. Then after I said that, of course, they come out and put
together up 47 on Louisville.
2 big weeks on offense. But going to Virginia Tech and in that game, seeing what they can do against kind of their biggest test of the year, an away game in a hostile environment, just see what Clemson can do and really see if they are truly that number 2 team in the country.
Yeah, that'll be one that I won't actually get the chance to. It's Saturday night. It's Saturday night, right? Like Saturday night. I won't actually get the chance to watch it, but I will definitely be keeping up with what is going on.
It's at 7 o'clock on ABC. ESPN's College Game Day, all that. That is the game of the week probably, but it's a big one in terms of the college football playoff.
This is a game that could really put Virginia Tech up into the elite. I like Clemson in that game, but it could really make people solidify Virginia Tech. It really could. So unless there's anything else you guys need to
I have
add,
one last game. It is also at 7 o'clock. It's on Fox, and it's Oklahoma State and Texas Tech. I just want to see if Oklahoma State can come out and if they try to prove a point. Because you've talked about Texas Tech's defense not being very good, but I want to see if they can stop Texas Tech. Because Texas Tech can score, but I want to see if they can at least stop them.
Saying Texas Tech's defense is not very good is like the understatement of the year.
It's like saying water is wet.
We could line up with you only on our offensive line, and we could interchange Jacob and I, whichever one's throwing pass, and we could probably put up 400 yards and 35 points. We'd still probably lose by 80, but we could do it.
It's very.
I mean, they gave up 66
3 on 11 football.
They gave up. Well, I mean, if you watch them play defense, they gave up 66 points to an awful Iowa State team last year.
I'm kind of interested to see what they give up to Kansas, because Kansas isn't very good, so I want to see what happens there.
Yeah. Okay, so unless everything else, we're going to move on. We don't pull punches here on this podcast. Definitely when I'm in charge. If anyone watched the NFL this week, and I know you guys.
I definitely
you guys
did.
I certainly did. And unless you've been living under the rock for the last couple of days, you're well aware with a lot of the things that took place in the NFL this week in regards to different players' approaches to the national anthem. I know the Seahawks and Titans, neither one of them came out of the locker room for the pregame national anthem. I know the Steelers, with the exception of Alejandro Villanueva, who is a former U.S. Army Ranger.
So I have an update on that whenever we get to it, because there's a bit of a thing that he talked about today / yesterday.
I think I know where you're going with this, but he's a former Army Ranger. He was the only Steeler that opted to come out for the national anthem. A lot of players took a knee. A lot of players maybe stood and locked arms in solidarity. A lot of this is something that isn't new. I mean, we saw it last year when Colin Kaepernick started. This is something that kind of, I don't want to say, like this week with President Trump's words, and you can view those however you want. They ended up obviously showing that they were very divisive with what he said at a rally in Alabama on Friday. Basically, to paraphrase it, he said owners should fire players that kneel for the national anthem. That's basically what he said, which one, as a president, is illegal to do, but that's not the point. This is a sports show, not a politics show. And a lot of players, it was almost like they protested that, it seems like. But nonetheless, they protested. It sparked a lot of outrage throughout the nation. Where are you guys at on this?
I mean, it depends how you view what they're doing. Because I don't view what they're doing as trying to dishonor the flag. I think they just happen to be doing it during the national anthem. And I think people get angry at that, and then they don't know what they're trying to do, and they just see it at, they just see it, and they're like, oh, so this is what you're doing, and then they get angry. But I think it takes more than just, hey, seeing it, try and understand what it is. And, you can still say, okay, well, then I may not think that that's happening, and you can start the argument there.
Yeah, this week we definitely saw an uptick of
I want to say it was close to 200 players total.
A lot
what I want to
say. Protests this week, and where I stand on that is it's a First Amendment right issue. They are using their First Amendment right. There's nothing wrong with what they're doing. I know it's putting it's a very, with what they're doing, it's very divisive. It's put your, I think the Steelers locker room is probably split right now.
Yeah, and
that's just speculation.
That's a pretty fair statement.
That's just speculation, but their locker room is probably pretty split right now. There's a lot of locker rooms, with the teams, especially the teams that stayed inside the locker room during the anthem, that were split, because there are guys on the team that don't agree with what other players are doing, and they stayed in the locker room to show that sign of unity. But with the Steelers, it again is split their locker room, and I lost my train of thought.
That happens.
So
I'll let Sean go with what he was going to say without Villanueva.
He came out and said he thought that his team was behind him, with him, because the plan was for them to come out and then stand where he was, that he ended up being by himself. They were all supposed to be there. All of the team was supposed to be where he was, and then it turned into him essentially throwing his team under the bus. He
apologized for it.
And
this is just the way people work nowadays. Is when I saw that, everyone basically, their thought process shifted to, wow, they're making a retired Army Ranger apologize for coming out of the locker room with the national anthem, which could be. And I read the same thing you did. I think that's probably, again, this is just what I think, a little bit away from the truth of it. And I don't know. I wasn't in that locker room. Neither were either one of you guys. So I don't know. This conversation is like an onion. There is a ton of layers to this. It is very simple just to scratch the surface and say,
oh, this is it.
This is it. You shouldn't do it. You're a communist because you do it. And you're disrespecting our veterans and our military, which, like I said, once you kind of peel back the layers and get below the surface there's a lot more to it. This isn't just people saying, oh, well, I don't care for the military. I don't care for the police officers. No one has gone out and said that. None of these players that have protested have said, well, I'm doing this because I don't like the military or I don't like this. A lot of them, Grant, haven't said anything, and that is something that I don't have a problem with what they're doing, because even though I don't like it personally, they have the right to do it. They have as much right to do it as I do to not do it. What I want to see is I want to see these guys basically come out and say, hey, this is what I am protesting. I mean, otherwise, it is a pretty hollow protest at that point. If they're not coming out, if they're just doing it to do it, then they're really just being a jerk about it. I mean, and to me, you got to have something behind it.
And I think that's the biggest issue with is there's no clarification on why anybody is doing what they're doing, because you've got the divisiveness of the issue. You've got fans that think they're disrespecting the flag, disrespecting the military, so they're no longer going to watch. I know we've seen a lot of that on social media. Of
we'll
fans
get to that a little bit later on.
Stuff. And then on the other, they're not protesting the military. They're not protesting the flag. You guys have already been over that, and it's just a clarification issue. Like with Villanueva's apology, I think that was misinterpreted as well. My interpretation of that is he wasn't apologizing for going out there and standing, for the anthem. He was just apologizing for the situation it caused in general, not that he went and did it, that just he was the only one out there and the way it made the Steelers organization look. I know that's a little bit of a separate issue there, but just it goes back to the clarification issue. I think there's just a little bit of confusion between why the players are doing what they're doing and the response of the fans, because it's not a military or veteran issue, which is what it seems to be right now.
Yeah, and to me, there's, like I said, we'll get more to the boycotting later on, because that's a whole nother piece of pie that I could go on forever about. I want to see some of these guys come forward and say, hey, this is why I'm doing it. And the one argument I've had with a lot of people is I've heard lots of people say, I get why they're doing it, I just don't like the way they're going about it, which to me basically says that they're not as up to date on what's going on as maybe they like to think they are. Because when you look at, a lot of them aren't saying what's going on. I mean, really, the only guy that's actually gone out and talked about anything is Richard Sherman. I mean, Kaepernick has done it in a way where he hasn't really talked about it. He spoke with his actions. Mm-hmm. I mean, he is a guy that hasn't ever really completely said his purpose behind this, but he's shown, that it wasn't just him trying to be a jerk. So I want to see some of those guys come forward and say why. And that it is what it is. It's not going to change my opinion whether or not they do it. To me, that is, like I said, that is their right given to them by the First Amendment. As much as I dislike it, having grown up with a stepfather who served in the Gulf War and a grandfather who served in the Navy and the Army and a best friend who is currently in the Air Force, I don't agree with the way they're going about it, but it's not my place to tell them that they can't or shouldn't, nor is it your guys's or the president's or anything else. Now, on the flip side of that, if, Marcus Peters, perfect example, if Clark Hunt says, no, I don't want this, and Peters says, well, too bad, I'm doing it anyways, Clark Hunt does have every right to say, okay, well, this is not how we represent the Kansas City Chiefs. Here's your walking papers. Goodbye. NFL teams aren't going to do that. They're not. Not to a Marcus Peters, not to a Michael Bennett or a
star,
guy, a star like that, or a Cam Newton. They're just not going to do it. Now, if he's the third string center that's only making veteran minimum, yeah, I mean it might be a little different, but people can whine and protest all they want to fire these guys. These are businessmen. They're not going to do it. They're just not.
Well, and now with what happened over the course of the week and what we saw on the weekend, you've got whole teams, and even we saw owners on the sidelines with their teams. So there's not going to be any firing. And like you said, if when before it was one person on a team, the owners do have every right to fire that player. It's still a workplace, and if you don't agree with your the company's ideas, then that is reason that you could be fired. But now that we've got whole teams uniting, you're not going to see anybody get
well,
fired.
And I don't think people from the outside, and I've noticed a lot of people, and I'm probably going to upset people saying this, and that's fine. A lot of the people that are boycotting the NFL aren't people that really followed as close as maybe someone like you or me. I mean, they're more of your casual football fan. So what they probably don't understand is, for one, for an owner to actually fire a guy because of this would be a legality nightmare from the NFL Players Association. Because I guarantee you, the moment that a guy like a Marcus Peters or something got cut for this, DeMaurice Smith is going to be right in Roger Goodell's office saying, we can't do this, Roger. We can't do this, and it would be bad. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's a lot trickier than people get, and I don't think people understand. And I'm not saying I do, because I don't understand either. I'm just a stupid 20-year-old kid. I don't think people understand that there's a lot more to this than just they're not standing for the national anthem, so they're thugs. And I've heard a lot of awful stuff the last couple of days, and I've unfriended people on social media. I'll be honest, because to me there's no place for that. You have the right to think that you don't like it. That is totally fine. You have the right to think they should be fired. I am not saying you should not. Yeah, I mean, I don't even know where to go from there on that. It's just, this whole thing is something that when Kaepernick said earlier this year, okay, I'm not going to kneel. My thought process was, okay, good, this is over. We can all just go along with our, and enjoy sports. And then we saw Michael Bennett do it. And then we saw Marshawn Lynch do it. We said, okay, well, this isn't a huge deal. There's guys doing it, but it's a small fraction of the NFL. And then Trump says what he said on Friday night. Take it for what it is. And I don't know that Trump's plan was, I'm pretty sure his plan wasn't, I'm going to say this and make the NFL really mad, and then a bunch more players will do it, and then people boycott the NFL, because I don't think he thinks things out that much. I think what probably, it was just kind of, we've seen in the past, again, I hate talking politics, but that he just kind of gets to ad-libbing stuff, and he goes off the emotion, and what he said tended to be very, very divisive, and a lot of them I think were reactionary. I'd be willing to bet there's probably not as many this week, but I could be totally wrong. Depends what he says on this Friday night. You guys have nothing else to add with my long-winded rant right there?
Well, I mean, it's hard because, I think what the Steelers tried to do before all this stuff happened, they just wanted to stay in so they didn't have to deal with it. But then people were like, oh, you're not coming out. I don't think there's a great option or even a good option for teams to do, because anything they do will still be seen from any side as, oh, well now you're against us type of thing. And so there's no good way, there's no good answer.
No, and there is no good answer. It's right now it's either, and I know I talked to you about this a little bit yesterday. You're either for it or you're against it. I mean, like even though someone like myself, who is a pretty middle person, I am, when I talk to people that are against it and I make my case, I am totally for it. And when I talk to people who are for it and I try to make my case, I am totally against it. And the vitriol that has gone on the last couple of days over some of this stuff is just crazy. I mean, in the end, it really doesn't matter, because they're going to do it whether we want them to or not. They really are. I mean, you really think that Marcus Peters, who I don't know what his rookie contract is, and I hate just constantly using him as an example, but he's the one that comes to mind. Let's say Marcus Peters is making $3 million a year. Okay. You really think Marcus Peters cares if Sean Nino from Lee Summit, Missouri, who's just one person, quits watching the NFL? They're not thinking about it. And to them, the guys that are actually deep in this is about more than that. Like, obviously, Colin Kaepernick did not care. Kaepernick said, I am okay if I never play in the NFL again. I mean, it's a lot bigger than that. Players aren't just all of us. The guys that are actually in this and are doing this for whatever reason they feel like they need to do it, they're not just one day going to go, oh, well, our ticket sales have been down by 300 people.
I don't think players care about
ticket
sales.
They don't.
I think they'll care if their contracts go down.
Yeah.
But that more has to do with
if
NFLPA versus
if the
NFL.
TV ratings drop and the ticket sales drop and the revenue drops drastically to where teams are having to maybe not go as big on contracts, then they might start caring. But guess what? That is still a long ways away from happening.
Contracts are still set. I mean, it may not be.
I think the TV contract is through like 2022 or something like that. So you got 5 more years. Most of these guys aren't still going to be in the league in 5 years.
Yeah, and with the NFL and on the money issue is it's still the NFL's still a business. They're in it to make money. So if indeed the boycotting fans actually it becomes a concern where there's enough people that the TV ratings drop, your sales tickets drop, where you look into a stadium and nobody's there. Well, not nobody, but their ticket sales are down. They're not selling as much as concessions. It's still a business. They still need to make money. Then you might see the NFL and these teams start talking to the players a little bit more. But with the boycotting fans, I think that's just this week. I think that you saw a lot of fans have knee-jerk reactions that 2 weeks down the road, they're going to be back at the TV watching NFL football.
I kind of thought, I don't know what I would do if I didn't watch on Sundays because I don't have, enough to do. Be like, oh, well, you can go out and do this and this and this. You're not going to do that for all, for the entire year. Like there are some people as Trevor talked about, they're just the casual fans. Like, oh, hey, if it's on, I'll watch. But then there are other fans who are like, oh, that is what I do for 22 weeks out of the year.
Yeah, I'm gonna go tell you right now. I mean, I hate to be that guy, but I can't think of much that the NFL would have to do to get me to not watch. And maybe that's just me being a sad human being. I'm not sure. But, I mean, for one, what in the world would I do on a Sunday? For 20, like you were alluding to, for 22 Sundays a year, what in the world would you do?
For the entire year, basically, because that would be gone.
From the first or second Sunday of September to the first Sunday of February, what would you do?
I don't know. It's been so ingrained to watch it that it's so different. And, I mean, maybe we would find another sport at that because,
NASCAR from September. But then other than that, but still, what would you do? I know me personally, I wouldn't have the motivation to maybe get, I'm going to steal this from Ryan Elliott, my honey-do list done. Mm-hmm. So, that wouldn't give me the motivation of, the Chiefs game starts at noon. Let's get everything done before noon and then, watch football all day. I wouldn't have that. It would be just kind of hollow. It would be kind of a waste of a weekend. It wouldn't make Sunday as good as it is. Because me, I don't care about Sundays, during the summer. But, when there's football on all day, heck yeah, I'll check that out. But and back to the boycott thing, fans have the right to boycott. They do. I'm not going to tell them how they should spend their time or money. If you are that upset about players protesting the national anthem that you've decided you don't want to spend any more of your time or money on, more power to you. However, your reasoning isn't, you're not being some ultra patriot for doing that. Basically, what you're saying is, I don't like they're doing this, but I am totally A-okay with everything else the NFL has done in the last 5 or 6 years. You look at the failure to educate players on concussions, the amount of players that are committing suicide due to brain-related injuries. I just read this article, and I'm not going to completely validify as far as its legitimacy, but it doesn't sound wrong. Right now, there are 44 players on an NFL roster who at some point in their life have been accused or convicted of a physical or sexual crime. I'm sorry, and this is where, maybe it's just me being me. I will take a guy who kneels for the national anthem. I don't care if 32 if all 32 teams, every player kneels for the national anthem. I won't like it, but I will take that over 12 guys in the entire NFL that apparently at one point or another thought it was okay to strike a woman or a child or something like that.
And that sexual assault, physical assault, that hasn't stopped anybody from watching. No.
I have never heard one person say I am not watching the NFL because Ray Rice hit his girlfriend.
So I think it'd be really sad that when we get the numbers back from this Sunday and see what the TV ratings were, see what everything is.
They were down.
Well, I'm talking
this upcoming Sunday?
This upcoming Sunday.
That'll be interesting.
If where they are and actually seeing how bad the NFL gets hurt by this Anthem protest. But if it's the Anthem protest and whole teams unifying, and if that's what causes people to not watch the NFL, that's a little bit
It's hollow.
worried.
It's very hollow. I mean, you're saying I know Tyreek Hill tried to strangle his pregnant girlfriend. I know that Greg Hardy nearly killed his then girlfriend or maybe ex-girlfriend. I know Adrian Peterson maliciously beat his 3-year-old son. But I really like the Vikings.
But you're really good at football.
Yeah, but you're really good at football. Oh my goodness, but
you had 1,000 yards last year, so it looks really nice. It's kind of faults of our own.
It is
kind of I know it's bad, but
yeah, and we could talk about this for hours. I mean, I could go on about this for hours. And one thing that I think when people say this, I think it's just kind of ignorance, is when they say, okay, well, these guys make millions of dollars. Yes, they make millions of dollars, and I will argue, and people say, well, they make more money than they should.
Yeah.
They do, but you know whose fault it is that they make more money than they should?
America.
It is my fault. It is your fault. It is your fault. If I don't go out and buy this Royals World Series championship shirt that I'm wearing, or I don't go out and buy Chiefs tickets for a game later this year, or an Alex Smith jersey, or, decorate my whole bedroom in Chiefs and Royals stuff, then they don't have that money. It's an entertainment business. Actors shouldn't make what they make, but they do because we're entertained by it, so we're willing to spend to get that. It's not their fault. It's the way capitalism works.
And when you go to, say, a Kansas City Chiefs game, you're going to pay around $100 for your ticket. Depending on
$100 probably for the entire thing, because I know last year was about $70 for a ticket, and I had put in money for a parking pass.
But you figure by the time you buy your ticket, pay a parking pass, there's we'll say $100 right there. That's probably low end. Buy food,
merchandise.
I know every time I go to a Chiefs game, I anticipate by the time I buy my ticket, my girlfriend's ticket, that's probably $200, $40 for parking, that's $240, plus probably 20 or 10 or 15 to eat in there a piece. And then we always tailgate before, so I got to throw in the extra clicker stuff too. I was here $250, $300.
And probably on average, it's about $150 per person.
Yeah, no, that's
if you. There's people that are going to go to a Chiefs game, just the parking pass, just the Chiefs ticket. Mm-hmm. They're going to try to avoid.
And I would
food.
like to know how those people do it. I really would.
But there's 80,000 people in the stadium, so you've got all of that money, and that's why the players are able to get so much money. And kind of going back to the Anthem protest, I think that's also why some people are unhappy about it, is they don't like the fact that
they have to pay as much too.
They don't want to pay that much money to see guys.
Mm-hmm. I'm paying this much, it should be my way. Well, then don't go. Someone will buy your ticket. I believe that.
I think NFL TV ratings will kind of be down, but they haven't been that great anyways.
Well, I
think they'll be down for 1 week, and then they'll go right back.
I think they'll be down at some
point.
At some point, this is going to end. I don't know how it's going to end, but it's going to end. Either the NFL, whether we like it or not, will issue a mandate that says, hey, you guys can't do this, or players are going to start coming forward, and eventually these, I don't want to call them lunatics, but I don't know what to say, are just going to kind of go off into the woodwork, and we'll be able to enjoy our football. Or what I personally think is going to happen, and I have absolutely no problem with, and most people don't like it, is, really what the Steelers did on Sunday, I had no problem with. What the Titans did, I had no problem with. I almost think, and I hate that, but this is the route we have to go. If you want to stand for the national anthem, you shouldn't tell a guy like Al Villanueva, no, you can't. But I don't think you should tell a guy you have to. They're all grown men. Who are making more money than their coaches. So I think that's where we're at. And what people, I guess, don't comprehend is the fact that actually until 9/11, a lot of times players stayed in the locker room. It really didn't become a thing until after 9/11. Everyone got this sense of patriotism and felt like they needed to. At the time, it was totally appropriate. And I don't think anyone will ever blame them for that. But now it's almost it's more symbolic than anything. It's not patriotic. I mean, the Department of Defense, the amount of money they spend a year for what they call paid patriotism to basically have the NFL make their players come out for the national anthem and stuff is ridiculous. I mean, this, like I said, this is a topic that a lot of layers to it, a ton of layers to it, and hopefully we've kind of somewhat semi-scratched the surface. And what was that look for, Jacob?
Nothing. I just wanted to add one thing. You kind of said that kind of pose the question a little bit, how does it end so the people that kind of just want to watch football can watch football? I think it just comes down to the players clarifying exactly what they're doing and putting a little bit, because actions do speak louder than words, but if you put a little bit of words behind your actions, they become that much more powerful. So if they say exactly what they're doing and why they're doing it and clarify it a little bit, I think then that'll get the fans on the same page, and then the purpose of the protest will meet its goal, and then it will end.
And see, in my way I would look at it, I've never been in an NFL locker room, I've never been a professional athlete, but and I guess, Jacob, I mean, you announced at a racetrack too, so you could maybe kind of take this the same way I do. If Saturday night, if I go to the track, and I'm not worried about this whatsoever, but if I see a friend of mine or someone I know that doesn't stand for the national anthem, or he kneels for the national anthem, my first thought isn't going to tell him to be a communist and that, he should get out of here and love it or leave it, which is the stupidest argument ever. But I'm not going to tell him. Me as a person would want to know, why do you feel this way? What can we do, not only as myself as an individual, but as society? What can we do to... I want to understand it, really. And not that I would ever actually fully understand it. And I think that's where people... it's not necessarily their fault, but a lot of these people that I've noticed that are totally against the anthem protests, of course they're not going to understand it. They're middle class, majority of them Caucasian people. And a lot of them have not, it's amazing the amount of people that have been, there's more people that have been dead set against it that never served a day in their life in the military than there are people that are veterans or grew up in military families or law enforcement that do support it. And I think that kind of gets lost. Michael Bennett grew up on a military base. His dad was a respected Air Force officer. Doug Baldwin, his dad's a police officer. A lot of that kind of gets lost in it. And I'm not saying it's their fault, but of course they're not going to, if you're a middle-class white dude from Southwest Iowa like myself, of course you're probably not going to relate with this African-American athlete who grew up in the projects of Houston or inner city Chicago. You're just not. You haven't seen the same things they have. They haven't seen the same things you have. It's a very, very tricky conversation that you almost can't have without upsetting somebody. I guess you just kind of got to be careful who you upset. I mean, and I've had this conversation with tons of people, and it's, you don't care about the military, you don't care about the police or whatever when you do this, and that's just your perception of it. And your perception is your perception. You have the right to your perception, as twisted as it may be. And I just want to talk about football. I watch sports
to kind of get away
from politics,
but now it's come into it and you can't avoid it.
No, but there is no way to avoid it. I mean, and I knew the beginning of the year when I saw Marcus Peters against the Patriots on Thursday night, when I saw him sit down, I thought, oh, you've got to be kidding me.
It's back.
It's back.
And
Football's
we're not talking
back.
About football at that point. So.
It's like, oh, you were kidding me. And I would just like to see us come to a point where at least we can kind of accept it and I think last year at one point it did kind of get to that point where we're just like, whatever.
Well, yeah, because I remember Marcus Peters did stuff in the home opener, and then it really wasn't covered. And so I think people will kind of back off, and they'll be like, okay, it's happening. And then we get back to football.
Yeah, I hope so. Cause
this might upset some people, but I would just like to turn on a ESPN Fox Sports highlight show and actually watch some highlights.
Yeah.
And
I've gotten to where I do not watch.
I don't watch it from any of them. It's not just one specific one. I'm just like, I can go on the website honestly and just find what I need to watch, and that's all I need. So I don't need to see what they've made that or what it is now.
I do not watch ESPN. I watch very little of Fox Sports. The only time I watch ESPN is if there's a game on or if there's a documentary. I do watch like College Game Day because it's College Game Day.
College Game Day is set up to be the way it is,
and I watch Sunday Countdown. That is it. I don't watch any of that the talk stuff for my own personal reasons. I have a lot better things to do with my free time than watch Max Kellerman and Stephen A. Smith yell at each other, or on the flip side, Skip Bayless and Shannon Sharp. I just do. So I don't follow that stuff. I read a lot. I enjoy reading a lot. And I'm with you. I'd like to be able to turn on, NFL Network or even ABC News and not have the first 15 minutes of whatever I'm watching be, about Anthem protests or about the president said this today and it sparked outrage from it. I just don't want that.
I mean, I remember, 4 or 5 years ago being able to, 9 o'clock turn on ESPN and catch up on the night of sports if I wasn't able to watch anything and kind of understand what happened in baseball, what happened in football, what happened in, all the sports. And now you can't, you have to go do that yourself. And I think if we could kind of
try and get back to that, but
I
think it's going to take a lot more to get there than we want to say. It's just it's not just, oh, hey, just go back to that, because they're talking about things that actually impact them. It's not just oh, hey, just, send it away, basically. It doesn't matter, because it does.
And I think, I hate to be that guy again, but I think that's a big, some of the problems with sports television, and I think that is why we've seen people basically cut the cable. I mean, it's amazing.
Also just the price.
That too. But how many? We've all basically said we don't really watch ESPN, and I know back in, was it April or May when ESPN laid off 100 people?
They basically made a thing where they were set up to fail, and it just happened to be now that it all came collapsing down.
But you look at some of the guys. I like the transition we've had here. This is a little bit more peaceful. I know we're getting close on time. But you look at some of the guys that they let go. Respected guys. Ed Werder, Jason Stark. Guys that I grew up listening to and really enjoyed and thought they were always very intellectual. Then you look at some of the guys that kept. Jameel Hill, Stephen A. Smith. Guys that, actually would have probably made more financial sense for them to get rid of them. But at the same time, they didn't, for whatever reasons, for maybe it was their agenda or what it was. And I think a lot of people have kind of grown tired of that. To me, when I'm listening to sports, I'm watching sports, I want sports. I don't care if you're a Democrat or a Republican or an independent. I don't want your liberal views in sports. I don't want your conservative views in sports. The only time I ever want to hear about the president in sports is if a team is visiting the White House, which doesn't sound like it's going to be happening a lot, or if the president is at a game. That is the only time I ever want to hear about, ESPN, Fox, CBS Sports, NFL Network ever mention politics. As if they're at the game or they're visiting or something like that. That's all I care about.
And on these sports shows, you can talk about the politics of what's going on because there are these anthem protests. You need to
put absolutely.
That on there, but then don't have people come on and give their personal views about it. Just show that this happened.
You can give some because,
and then go to the game and show what actually happened in the game,
and then just go to the highlights type of stuff. But
I have no problem with thorough sports conversations at all. I love it, whether it's about something like this or who the greatest NFL quarterback is of all time. I have absolutely no problem with that. But I don't know. It's just
it's not a simple A to B type of conversation.
No, it is not.
There's an A to Z to B to back to A, and just.
And I think that's kind of the anthem protest is. It's really difficult because we're so emotional. It's really difficult to actually be able to sit down with somebody who doesn't agree with you, and vice versa, and actually be able to logically
talk it out.
I personally, I don't care what your thoughts are, and you shouldn't care what my thoughts are.
But you should still be able to have the conversation.
Yes.
And then be able to walk out and be like, okay, I didn't think about it that way, and now it's in my head instead of, oh, well, I don't care for you anymore. Bye.
Yeah, I think narrow-mindedness is
Either
something
way,
that's very, very prominent in today's world. Okay, I think I've about worn out on this. So real quick here, first of all, I picked Kyle Larson to win on Sunday, and I came close. Caution comes out. I think he gets him. Or no, did I pick Kyle Larson? Yeah, I picked Kyle Larson. You picked Denny Hamlin.
Yeah, that didn't go well.
Wow. Yeah, it really didn't go well. So Dover this week, who you got?
The obvious choice is Jimmy Johnson. I mean, it's Dover, but I think Martin Truex is just too much on a roll. I think he's going to win another one, keep someone else from getting those playoff points, and Martin Truex is going to pick up another W.
He picks Martin Truex every week except the one week he didn't. I did, and I won. Sean?
Oh, I'm going to go with Jimmy.
Jimmy? That's like with 11 wins and 31 starts. That's almost like saying the Patriots are going to win the AFC East. I mean,
that's like a lock right now.
Yeah, that's pretty much. I'm gonna go the flip side of that. I'm gonna go a guy that always runs well come crunch time in the playoffs. Go Kevin Harvick.
Feels good, man.
He runs surprisingly well at Dover. So I'm gonna go Kevin Harvick. So there you go. There's our pointless NASCAR picks of the week. I know no one cares whatsoever, and that's fine. Yeah, that's all we got. I don't know about you guys, but I got nothing else to add. To anybody that actually sat through that entire conversation, I hope you enjoyed it, and thank you.
Tweet
Anything
at
else?
us.
Yeah, tweet at us, please.
Start
feel
a
free.
conversation, because I mean we can't really get anywhere if we don't have a conversation.
You know, the best way to go about this is to educate ourselves and to not be narrow-minded. And you don't have to like it; just accept it. And instead of, putting that vitriol and stuff out there that maybe they're protesting, just don't do it. But easier said than done. Yeah, so okay. We'll be back here next week for another edition of the X106 Sports Podcast, and I guarantee you, and we will more than likely, 99.9999% sure, not talk about this unless it comes to a complete stop. Can we agree that we won't talk about it next week?
Or if it blows up.
Or if it's where it's at right now, we will not talk about it. But if it blows up or it comes to a complete stop, that's the only way we'll talk about it.
Yeah, I think the discussion needed to happen this week.
I think it did.
But next week, let's stick to sports.
Let's stick to.
That's a take but that's a different.
Yeah,
thing.
Wow. Okay, we're gonna sign off before this show lasts another hour. Yeah, that'll do it for this week's X106 Sports Podcast with Jacob Blair and Sean Eno. I am Trevor Mader. We'll see you back here next week. This is the X106 Sports Podcast.